I come to you today with a very exciting review. Very exciting. GS 1300. Let's rock. Welcome to the wide world of the new GS 1300. Super exciting bike. We're going to be doing a demo ride on this. It is a group ride, I'm telling you, but it's going to give us enough to be able to get a feel for this bike. So I want to talk a little bit about the 1300. I'm going to put some voiceover in the video for you as well so we can really talk about some of the specs. But this bike is completely redesigned from the ground up. There are cues that you can tell that this is a GS, but there's not a lot of cues. There's a lot of things that are much different on this bike than the other ones. So I'm gonna go front to back. We'll just talk about a few things and then gonna take it for a ride. You've got an adaptive cruise control radar module where the old headlight used to be. And then you have the new headlight, which they went from the squinting eyeball to the Cyclops. So totally different. These are your running lights and a really focused LED headlight in the middle. As far as the front end goes, you still got dual Brembos. They're shipping them with the Anarchy Roads and the Wilds, from what I understand. I'm sure there's going to be all types of things, but you've got a 19-inch tire in the front. And immediately when you start looking at this, you start to see a lot of things that are similar to the old style GS, but just totally different. For instance, the suspension, you still have the funky telelever that is, in my opinion, the best suspension out there for any motorcycle because of the ability to control front end dive. You've got your double radiators, but they're different than the other ones. You've got this massive crankcase cover in the front, but you're going to start to go rapidly off track when you start looking at this. So you actually have a sight glass and gauge style instead of just your round one that you had before. So that's totally different. The jugs don't stick out as far. So BMW shortened up the stroke and increased the bore diameter. Completely different engine. And as soon as you start looking at this, you're also going to notice another huge departure. Yeah, the gearbox is underneath instead of on the back. Crazy. You got a remote reservoir, rubber isolation pegs, although these pegs really aren't super off-roadish. But again, this is the GS edition. The GSA has not come out yet. Totally different luggage mounting setup too, similar to the XRs, and even a power port on the back here. That is another feature that this has, is the blind spot monitor. Just to give you a shot on this too, this bike seems to sit a little lower. The gentleman that's holding it right now is even 5 foot tall. No, I'm kidding. He's as tall as I am. He's probably gonna beat me up now. Radar in the back, and no integrated single tail light. You've got your doubles, just like the XRs and the F900. I kind of like it. I kind of like the way it looks. Two-piece seat as well. Everything's very similar. And one thing I really liked about this too, seeing this, they actually bring the seat material up the gas tank. There's also another storage compartment just like the other ones. This one's actually big enough to put stuff, you know, in it. The triple tree is different too. It's got a very interesting bolt pattern, and the handlebars seem a little bit flatter. The other thing interesting about this is integrated blinkers on the bark busters, if you will, on the hand guards. There is no blinker setup like the old GS. See? So you're not going to see that. Now, as far as putting these side by each, you can see the difference. It's dramatic, especially when you look at the stance on how wide this bike is and massively huge looking at this one. And again, granted, this isn't the Adventure, but how much more width is that going to add? I can't wait to see the Adventures when they come out. Pretty cool. I'm going to show you another thing too. If you look at this, the sight glass is right there, and it's really difficult to measure just because of the way it's made. This one, boy, just look at how awesome that is. Hey, let's go for a ride and check this bike out, shall we? Uh-oh. Where's the power button? Oh, it's right there. New. Wow, wild. I was looking for the power button. I couldn't find it. Ooh. Still wants to do the counterclockwise rotation. That's nice. We'll put it in dynamic just to be fair. Windscreen. Power windscreen. Nice. Multi-rocker switch. So this allows you to set different things. So this button, you can tell it to do one of the two. Much narrower. The engine has a little bit of a tap, tap, tap to it. The BMW ride team, they got to be the nicest guys around here. I'm telling you, they are so nice. All right, so there is a lot of hubbub about the 1300, and I am not as high ranking as some of the other reviewers out there that you've probably seen. I know I've seen some of the videos because I've been watching it. I'm just a total GS fanboy. And some of these guys are like taking the bike to dyno, off-road, doing all this crazy stuff, and that's just not me. BMW probably doesn't even recognize who I am, so I get it. But the demo day is nice because it gets you on a route. It's about 9 miles. It gives you the ability to feel the bike, feel what it's made out of, you know, a variety of terrain, curves, straight roads, a little fast stretch right here. So it allows you to kind of really get a good feel for things. But let's talk a little bit about this bike. There is a ton of information out there, again, like I said, that you can review, telling you all the differences. But this bike is brand new from the ground up. I mean, there's really very, very little that's the same. Let's take off here. You ready? Wow, fast. I like the fact that this thing is blinking at me. What does that mean? That's not a camera thing. That's weird. That is... I wonder if that's a bug. This is one of the brand new units when they first came out with them, and it's a demo bike, so I mean it's gotten sloshed around a lot. 3,000 miles on it. Real world miles has probably got like 100,000 on it. Anywho, the geometry of this bike is nice. However, this feels a lot different than the 1250. That's the bike that I have, and I've owned a few of them. This bike seems so much smaller. So much smaller. And the riding position is very similar, but I feel like I'm leaned forward just a tad bit more, and I feel like my legs are kind of bent a little bit more as well, kind of tucked in. Honestly, just the geometry really reminds me of my XR. It's just a smaller profile, which could be good in certain aspects. Wow, she pulls. She pulls good. I will tell you right now too, the vibrations on this are just completely non-existent. This bike is just handling fine. See, this flashing thing is kind of driving me nuts though. That's weird. All right, let's check out the menu. We got a sport mode menu, which is new to this year. Going into that, oh, look at what it does. It gives you the 1000 style gauge. Now you can't switch it off of this, but it does give you this dynamic view. I'm going to leave it on this because the other one is, yes, it's going to cause a seizure. So we'll leave it on the sport mode. We're going to execute this corner up here. It's a pretty big corner, so we should see our lean angle. Interestingly, you get a 26-degree lean angle on this, on the right side, and only a 16 on the left, which is 10-degree difference, huh? Wow, very, very well balanced. This bike does not have the same feeling that the GS has as far as leaning into a corner. This bike is very easy to maneuver, where the GS you almost counter steer a little bit because of the geometry of the bike. So BMW got that right on the frame design. This bike is much more nimble and much more sporty. I also feel a little bit of the difference in the power band. The old GS, I'm going to lug this down and I'll tell you what I'm talking about. So the old GS, around 2,000 RPMs, you can roll into it right about here. You can roll into it and it'll still launch out. So I can tell you that this definitely still has that torque, but I can actually hear pinging or pre-detonation. So there's a knock sensor on this, obviously, but this bike has a higher compression ratio than the 1250, so it's not going to want to be lugged as much as the 1250. Just by simple engine dynamics of high compression motors tend to suffer from pre-ignition knock much quicker, and that's obviously not good for the engine to do sustained, so you wouldn't want to do that. It's interesting too, the wind protection here is a lot different looking. Just the fairing itself is so much smaller. The wind screen on this actually does a pretty good job. I don't have the same buffeting that I have from my other one. Cranky lady. And obviously with the screen being able to be raised and lowered, power, that's awesome. And boy, I tell you, bringing that up here, the wind noise is completely gone. So that's nice. I think on my GS with the cranker thing, you got to crank it up and down. It's kind of annoying. And even at the most upright position, I'm 6'4", and I still get whacked right in the forehead with wind. On the highway, it actually tends to give you a little bit of the death wobble feel because your body's doing this and the bike, shakes and shimmies. So you actually kind of have to hunch over to get behind the window. But I can see that this right here is much improved. Just off the bat though, right now, I will tell you, this seat is not as plush as even the F900 that I rode earlier today. It just is, it's very firm. It's got a very firm feel to it. And in dynamic mode, boy, the engine brake on this is actually pretty pronounced too, almost like a regenerative braking feel. Yeah, this bike has a lot of power. You can actually noticeably feel the difference. But it doesn't seem to come on, like I said, from the 2000 area. It seems right around the 4,000 RPM range it wants to take. This has a hydraulic clutch, which is buttery smooth, and I really like BMW's reservoirs on this bike. They're not using the cheap plastic universal one. Shifting on this, the quick shifter up and down is much improved. It's very, very positive engaging. On the 1250, it's a little bit washy when you try to shift up and down. I think this bike is reminding me of a blend between the two bikes I already own. It's got the XR feel, the upright feel, with a smaller profile, but the GS features of being a more rugged, larger bike. So I kind of like it. Old lady getting her mail. And and brushing the fleas off her arm. I'm gonna change the mode to road. And let's feel the engine braking on this. Yeah, it's still right there. It's still very pronounced. So this bike doesn't coast as well as the 1250. And in some of the reports I've seen, the fuel mileage actually suffers a little bit as well on this bike versus the 1250. The 1250's fuel tank, I believe, is a couple liters larger as well. And this bike, they state, has better range, but I think they're pretty neck and neck. I know I did the walkthrough video, but I really like the fact that this front of the tank is actually the same seat material. My tank is always getting scraped up from kind of riding up on the belt buckle section of the tank, so I kind of like this as a nice feature. I like the bigger storage compartment here too, and the clamp on the top here for the handlebars is definitely different. It appears that it has some sort of dampener built into it as well. Which allows for adjustment. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah, still blinking. Wow, that's dumb. What else do we have in the menu here? So everything's kind of the same as all the BMWs, but I really like the fact that they gave me the sport display. That's awesome. I wish that my 1250 had that, because I just love this view. This bike really seems to have more torque higher up and less torque lower down. I know that sounds non-scientific, but this bike doesn't seem to want to lug the same as the 1250, which makes sense because the stroke is shorter. You've got a faster revving engine, even though the displacement is bigger. It's just a faster revving engine. Very comfortable though, and obviously set up for 2-up riding. This seat's a little bit firm, like I mentioned before, as opposed to the regular GS, but it's not uncomfortable by any means. Luggage options on this are different too. They've got powered luggage, so you have central locking now, which is fantastic. You can lock everything with a push of the fob. And I would love to know if the luggage actually has power inside of it. So like if you're charging up your camera gear and all that stuff, that'd be awesome. So I'm gonna quick shift down to first and see if it works. Yep, no problem. Actually, really, really, really good. Yeah, the quick shift on this is real easy. Much more improved than the 1250. I really want to see what the GS Adventure is going to be like. I want to see what other little modifications they make to it will be. It'll be interesting to see if it changes the overall profile of it, or if it ends up being, you know, kind of the same size and they wrap all of the protection around the cylinders very closely. So that'll be interesting to see as well. But all in all, a lot of cues that speak to its predecessor. Let's get it on. Yeah, nice. I like it. This bike has a dramatically larger power band above 4,000 and noticeably less power below 4,000, like on the GS. I can, even here, just getting it on it, I could hear the engine knock. So, and I'm pretty sure they run premium in this anyways. I'll have to ask them when I get back. But this bike wants to live in higher revs than the 1250. The 1250 seems to be a little bit more of a thumper mentality. So, but all in all, boy, this is a great platform. I am super impressed. Again, not being paid for this review, and it's a relatively brief review with limited testing. I am impressed with this bike so far. I actually may take it back out again for another demo ride when I can get my name on the list, because I like it. It's much more nimble than the 1250 as far as handling goes. So what are your thoughts? Have you had a chance to ride one of these? If not, get out there and find one at a dealer or a demo day and let me know your thoughts. I'd be curious. I really eagerly anticipating the adventure model because I want to see what that looks like, and by the time they publish the adventure, hopefully the kinks will be worked out. This has radar too. If you notice that I came up kind of quick on that barrier and it started blinking at me telling me to slow down. That's pretty funny. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know if you're thinking about it, and again, after the first year letting the kinks out, it'll be interesting to see where these go. Thanks for tuning in again, and as always, ride safe.